Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Change Your Mind podcast, where we explore personal development, spirituality, and science. I'm your host, Chris Ashley. I have a really exciting guest with me today. I can't wait to get into our conversation. But first, a couple quick announcements. Head over to the links in the show notes. You are going to find my lovely guest links. You'll also find a link to my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. It was endorsed by Bob Doyle, Marcy Shimoff, Michael Beckwith, all of whom were on The Secret. It was endorsed by John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, Anita Morjani, who wrote Dying to Be Me. You'll find links to sponsor my podcast. You'll find links to courses, to coaching, to free masterclass, free downloads, just a wealth of information there. Also ways to connect on social media. So please come stay connected. And as always, this podcast is part of the Los Angeles Tribune Podcast Network. Sounds weird, a newspaper is in charge of a podcast network, but a huge personal development branch. We're putting on amazing personal development events. They are spearheaded by a woman named Mary Glorfield. She was Tony Robbins' EVP of production for 18 years. So I've gotten to share the stage with some incredible, inspirational people. All my fellow podcasters are phenomenal. Go check out their shows as well. What if the one thing keeping you stuck is the way you think? Welcome to Change Your Mind with Chris Ashley, the podcast where science meets spirituality and mindset becomes your most powerful tool for transformation. I'm Chris Ashley, author of Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality, trainer, speaker, and lifelong seeker. For years, I battled trauma, depression, anger, chronic illness, low self-worth, and the weight of old stories. Until I discovered how to rewire my mind, reconnect with my divine nature, and consciously create a new reality from the inside out. This show is here to help you do the same. Each week, we explore the intersection of personal development, spirituality, and science, diving into topics like healing, emotional mastery, entrepreneurship, resilience, and the quantum nature of reality. You'll hear powerful stories, gain practical tools, and real conversations that will help you change your perspective, get unshakable confidence, and live the vision your soul has always known is possible. Whether you're navigating a major life shift, building your dream business, or seeking deep healing and alignment, you're in the right place. So if you're ready to break through, take back your power, and create a life on your terms, this is your moment. Let's break free from the patterns that hold us back, awaken to who we truly are, and rise. Your transformation starts now. And let's jump into it. So with me today, I have Marie Antoinette Kelley. Marie Antoinette is an award-winning artist who has done hundreds of commissioned portraits, as well as the art for the Angel Quest Oracle. She has appeared on dozens of TV, radio, and podcast shows, and has been published in such magazines as Edge and Authority. In 2019, her bison portrait in the form of woven blankets began selling throughout Yellowstone National Park's general stores. To find out more, visit her website at makefineart.com. But what I'm really excited to talk about as well is that Marie Antoinette wrote a children's book about near-death experiences. So welcome, Marie Antoinette. I'm so happy you're here with me.
Hi, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I always start all my shows the same way, and that is by asking my guests what is their origin story. And I really want to focus on, at least to start, the near-death piece. So if you wouldn't mind explaining, like, what was your journey to want to write a kid's book about near-death experiences?
Yeah, that's actually pretty much my lifetime in a nutshell, because I have been fascinated with the other side ever since I was little. And as a child, I had a lot of other side experiences that I couldn't make sense of. And because I couldn't make sense of it, it made me scared. And that includes being scared of death and dying and what happens. And so that fear was something kind of foundational in me that I had to outgrow as an adult, and it led me to search for the answers, and it started my spiritual journey and my self-development, really. And so along that journey, as I got the answers, I started to realize how powerful it would be if you as a child grow up with the knowledge that the other side is real, that, there's life after death. And there's so much information about that out there now. So many people have had a near death experience as the medical world keeps advancing. And, they come back with stories. And while they're unique, they have fundamental ingredients that are all overlapping. And so I decided to take those fundamental ingredients and make a children's story that was based on um, the one particular near-death survivor, and that was Daniel Brinkley. And then steer away from his story a little bit because it's an intense adult story, his, and he was struck by lightning. But taking his fundamental story, softening it a bit because this child in the book drowns which can be resuscitated, but then has an experience of the other side based on what the research shows is the fundamental ingredients of what happens when we die. And I put that out there, first of all, because it was healing to myself, but also because I figured I'm not the only child in the world that's afraid of death and would like to understand this right from the start rather than having to find your answers as a grown up for the first time. And so, in a nutshell, that's my motivation for writing the children's book.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And you kind of glossed over that you had several experiences with the other side as a child. I'd love to hear more about those.
Oh yeah, my whole life I've had that experience, and actually, it's interesting. Making sense out of our own spiritual nature has been kind of the underlying theme of my life that I try to address with this book as well. Because as we realize that there is life on the other side, do we have to wait for that life to die, or is it available now? Is it interacting with us now? And so, what I found as a child that it was interacting with me already, and I would have a lot of experiences of people that hadn't crossed over into the light, for example, and like tap me on the shoulder, and I'd look around and I'd be like getting information, and it was very much honestly like the movie The Sixth Sense, which
Mm.
I have issue with because there's some changes in that movie that they Hollywoodized, I like to say, and it was upsetting to me for that reason to watch it because while my husband watched the movie and he was upset for all the scare factors, like it was scary to him to know that spirits can interact with us. For me, it was like I remember this one particular scene in the movie, for example, where that boy sits there and a spirit comes into his sacred space and vomits all over him. And I realized that's the one thing that kept me strong and confident as a child, that sacred space couldn't be violated by those spirits. And so I realized that a lot of fear that I had was needing education, and I needed to understand how to interact with the other side that was contacting me, for healing and for shifting and for like release, like I now know happens to spirits that are stuck, and how to use the language of prayer or sacred energy to strengthen myself and to release somebody from the other side, and understanding that there's a whole world to be understood that is the world of spirit and the way it interacts with us. So as a child, that happened a lot, and so these answers started coming as I grew up, and from simple things, even not even just people that had passed away. But one time, this as an adult already, but my sister was visiting, and she still lives in the Netherlands, where I'm from. And I felt her husband, who was still in the Netherlands, tap me on the shoulder as well. He's like, "Get her to call me." So I was like, "Hey, Carolina, my sister, can you call your husband at home? He wants to talk to you." So she's like, "Well, how do you know?" I said, "Well, he just tapped me. His spirit just tapped me on the shoulder." So she called him, and it turns out that he had just fallen out of bed with a nightmare, and he just wanted a little comfort and connect with her.
So
And
wait, hold
so
on. Was he aware that he had tapped you on the shoulder?
no, no, he was needing her though. So when she called, it confirmed that he did need her and that he wanted to talk to her. So he had must have sent out like a message, like "I want to talk to her," and that message landed. He wasn't like conscious of tapping me on the shoulder. He was just sending out like some SOS to his wife to call her, and I happened to pick it up, and in the ether, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so it's the language of the other side. I realize is very practical at the same time very real, and sometimes it's just interwoven with everyday life, but in a way that we make more of. I mean, I don't want to sound like it's a bigger deal than it is. For me, it's very practical at this point, and I wish to impart the practicality of the reality of the other side to children. And that's what the children's book is. The subtle reasons for that children's book are all to highlight life goes on, and there is a reality of spirit that supplements our everyday existence in the physical world. And I hope I answered your question.
You did. So you also told me while we were in the green room that you were dead for 2 minutes at one point. What's that story?
Oh, well, actually, my I gave birth to my son. It was a trauma birth, and so this is 18 years ago. He was dead for 2 minutes. I was dead briefly, and then unconscious for like 8 hours, and came back. And this is actually after I had already written the children's book, and I had already been studying near-death experiences. And because of my childhood with my interactions with the other side, it was always a pressing quest inside of me to figure out how the other side really fits here for myself rather than taking other people's word for it. So that led me on to studying other people's near death experiences. And when we had the trauma birth, I was basically, there were circumstances that led up to it. And so in the moment that I abrupted and I'm basically bleeding to death with him still inside of me, anyway, I don't want to go into the gory details. So in that moment, there was 60 seconds to save my life. My husband was rushing me to the emergency room because he was bigger and stronger than the nurses, and they were trailing him, and they were like shouting and trying to get everybody there together in order to do the emergency surgery to get him born and save my life. And there's 60 seconds that everything was beginning to crash in on me. I recognized the ingredient of the near-death experience because I had studied them so much, and I could feel a 6-foot circle of incredible peace, like complete dissociation with the fact that I was in such an emergency and that I was at death's door. And then outside of that was this whirling chaos, just like the beginnings of what I would imagine is that tunnel. The activity's out there, and I'm in the center of total peace. And then I remember thinking, oh, and this is what it's going to like to die. And I thought to myself, but wait, I don't want to die. And these are quick thoughts. And I was like, I already know that the other side is real. I don't need further proof. And I clenched my fist and I was like, I need to be here. I have 2 daughters as well as my son that was born in that moment. And I remember thinking, I need to be here for my 2 daughters. And I just like set my teeth and I just decided to be the survivor rather than to find out what death was like. And so in that moment, they froze my thought. And when I came back, they told me the story that because I thought I was really fighting, apparently, when I was, first of all, I had flatlined and then I was unconscious because they had overdosed me and I had lost like almost 2/3 of my blood. And so trying to get me back was the question. And they didn't know if my kidneys or liver would turn back on because they were so traumatized by the experience. And so in that window, they said I was fighting like an animal in death row. They needed 4 nurses to keep me on the brancard because of that last thought that I had that I really wanted to be here. And so when I did actually come back, I thought to myself, how weird that that's the only experience I had when I was really just my physical self. Where did my spirit go? And then I remember laying there, and obviously I had returned back to my body, and that clarity set in that people talk about with the near death experience, which is I had never been outside of that hospital, standing. I had been brought in on a stretcher and I had only been in the room that I had been in. And I could feel my husband enter the hospital. I could count the seconds that he was coming out of the elevator and coming through my door, and there he was standing. And so my whole world had been restarted in the same way that, again, people talk about they have in the near death experience, that clarity of being in touch with a reality that is spiritual rather than physical, and counting our own interactions with other human beings in that reality. It was all available to me, and I could almost like see my little boy wasn't on the same floor with me, and I felt like I could see through the floors and be with him. And I got to see him the next it took 36 hours before I could actually sit up and go and visit him. But when I got to see him there, I still had that ability, and I remember seeing him standing next to his own body because he had been dead for 2 minutes. He had aspirated all the blood, and there was a trauma in his lungs and heart, and so he had to be resuscitated and healed from that. So he had 15 wires and tubes going into him, and I wasn't allowed to pick him up yet, but I touched him, and I saw next to his own little body, I saw him, his soul, and he was 6'5" or so, so I was like, oh my gosh, and I just knew it was like a spiritual communication, like all was going to be well. Like he was looking out for his own little body that he was going to forget that he was going to enter, but that he was going to use for this life that he's living. And so this is 18 years ago, and I remember saying from day one, I told him that story as soon as um, he grew up healthy, of course, right? He recovered from all of it, and so the story became something that I just shared with him. And over his life, I said, you're going to turn to be 6'5" because I saw you standing next to your baby body. And guess how tall he is? He's 6'5". He turned into 6'5". So
That's cool.
it was just these moments that are outside of time that are really very incredible to be a part of. That actually reminds me of something else because a week before the trauma birth, I was told that I could have this baby naturally, and I was already in the hospital because he had a birth defect and needed to be taken care of. And in that moment, I felt an incredible fear come over me, like something wasn't right. And this is a week before this event that I just touched on with you happened. And I remembered needing to shift that fear. And in order to do so, I used whatever healing techniques that I knew, kinesiology techniques and prayer and meditation. And I spent 4 hours literally talking to each one of my organs to shift the fear that was in them so that I could set them free to connect with source, because I know my hair will grow without my permission, my nails will grow just fine without me getting involved, and I knew that each of my organs could do what I needed it to do without me telling them or limiting them with my personality or with my fears. So that took 4.5 hours. It was like a really profound, deep, sacred meditation for me, after which I fell into a deep sleep and I was really at peace. And I woke up the next morning, and this was July 4th, and they said the NCU had filled up, so I couldn't give birth that day. And I was like, oh my gosh, I must have passed the test and shifted the fear, and it's all going to be okay. And little did I know I needed a few more days to integrate this big energetic shift for the real journey that was going to happen, that disaster moment where I had 60 seconds to live, and they couldn't even get a knife. They only used a blade. And, the radical, extreme, violent moment in which they didn't know how much medicine I needed, and they overdosed me and all that. And when they said, I don't know if she's coming back, they came out crying, and we don't know if her kidney and liver is going to make it. I knew they would because of that event a week before. And I believe that all of that is part of the same story of spirit, just constantly guiding us if we can only listen, even if we don't understand the steps, just surrender to these steps and then participate, which I ended up being very grateful for, because I do believe that I'm sitting here intact and strong and healthy because my organs did what they knew they could do best in spite of me, in spite of my fears, and then brought me back. And life has been an interesting journey with those kind of communications and interactions now being kind of how I live, and making it special. And again, taking it back to the children's book, it starts with understanding that death is not the end. And it starts with understanding there is an entire realm of spirit, supports everything that we do, that is a physical awareness. And I wanted to start at the beginning with children, so when they're naturally psychic personalities and their natural intuition as children, keep that alive, knowing that is a communication. It's a form of being connected to your spirit guides, to angels, to those who guide us, and to keep that alive for a lifetime so that we can have more success and more and better results with the challenges we go through here.
Totally. And I mean, kids really are tapped into the other side more, right? They're like fresh from the
Hmm.
universe, they're closer to
Right.
source. And I was just reading some crazy statistic that was like when kids are like 2 or something, like 99% of them are a genius, and then as they start
Yeah.
to go through school, it's like less and less because they're losing that, they're getting programmed, right?
Right, right.
But I just wanna just talk about your story for a moment, like, that's so
Yeah.
scary. Like, as someone that
Well,
I just gave birth 9 months ago, and I'm like
oh,
it's, like, so fresh
congratulations.
for me, and I'm like, "That is
Oh,
so scary."
oh, congratulations.
Um, Thank
Yeah,
you, but,
that's
like
why I'm reluctant to tell it because I don't want to go into the fear of it, and there's a lot of gory details that would sound like a horror story, but what I was protected by the entire time
yeah,
was the connectedness to the other side, which was really
right.
holding me and steering me, and my husband is the one that came away with the PTSD, and I didn't.
Oh
So
my gosh, I
because
can't
of that
imagine how
connection,
traumatizing that was for him, and, like,
it was,
I
yeah.
I love that
Mhm.
you made the choice, like, in that moment where you clenched your fists and, like, clenched your
Mhm.
jaw, and you're like, "Okay, I actually don't need to know what it's like to die
Right,
because I've done the
right.
research, like, I need to be here for my kids, like, I'm
Yes,
meant to be here," and it like, you hear
yeah.
that, like, I'm also we kinda talked before the show, we have a lot of similar interests. I've also studied so many NDEs, I've read so many books, I've watched so many I
Mhm.
just had Paul Perry on my television show, and he co-wrote all the books with Dr. Raymond Moody, right? So like
Right.
literally like he has all the stories. And where was I going with this? Oh, so much of it, so many of those instances, like the person has the choice if they want to come back or not, right?
Yes, right.
And it's like you made that choice before you even
I
went to the other
did, right.
side, and so
Yeah.
it's almost like,
I realized
okay,
I
we're
was
not, and I
almost,
wonder
like,
if that's why you
spoiled.
didn't, like, see anything,
Mhm.
right? That's why you didn't have that classic thing because you already made that choice, and you're
I
like,
think part of it I think the other part of it, the heavy medicine that I was under, I think they were affecting my spiritual faculties to some degree, but, because it was such a smack to my consciousness, but at the same time by the way, Paul Perry endorsed the book, and so did Anita Moorjani, because
amazing. They're both
yeah,
incredible human beings.
yeah. And they read this book and they said it is the story for children that is true to the experiences that are out there. And it is true that you make these choices and that we each and every one of us do.
That's
And
awesome.
in that moment I remember feeling almost like greedy for wanting a near death experience out of it because it's one way to romanticize it, but a near death experience comes with a lot of pain. Let's be real about it. To die and come back is a lot of suffering in your body that you have to shift and work through. And the beauty is the blessing of the great story. But if you can get that beauty and the blessing of a spiritual connection without the suffering of having to die first, that's all the better. And so I realized that I had enough of those experiences to stop doubting. I was like a doubting Thomas, and I was like, just embrace it. And I since
Yeah.
then, before this experience 18 years ago, I was the kind of person always wistful for the other side. I was missing my heavenly home. I knew it was out there, and I wanted it back. And I was like almost dismissive of the earthly experience. I never really, did the party life or anything because it couldn't it couldn't like touch what I was feeling. The other side really holds for me. When I had this dramatic experience and I made that choice, like you just said, I calmed down. I was like, you know what? I'm here. This is a profound experience to be alive. I can't just discard it and think the other side's better. I'll get there in due time. And I calmed down and I finally started living the life that I feel I'm here to live, that appreciates what we do here, how we create here, which is another sub theme for my children's book. That I think when you understand where the pieces fit, that there is spirit, that there is matter, and that they both support each other, you don't have to go through these moments of angst that you want to be somewhere else and not here versus um, only here and forget about the other side. Each has its proper role to play. And I feel much more alive now, interestingly, because I have consciously embraced the reality of spirit while also fully being grateful for the fact that I have a body and that I got to live, that I got to
Yeah.
stay alive and be here and be part of it all. So that kind of straightened that whole dilemma out for me.
Total, I appreciate everything you said because as you were talking about how like you kind of, I think you said selfishly wanted one, like I
Yeah.
totally relate to that. Like so my dad and my like heart dog both passed away within the last like year and a half, 2 years, and as I was getting my labor was coming sooner and sooner, like, I had that thought, and I even said it to my husband. I was like, "I wanna, like, have a near-death experience while I'm giving birth so that I can see my dad and Soda again."
Yeah,
And my husband
yeah.
was like, "Don't you dare fucking do that to me." Like,
He kept it
but
real.
but you just said something that totally
Mhm.
resonated, though. You're like, "I already have those experiences,"
Yes,
and the truth is, like, they visit me all the time. Like, I've had so
right.
many experiences with them,
Mhm,
and I just appreciate what you said because it just kinda,
mhm.
like, came full circle for me. It's like, yeah, I don't need to do that because they are here and I do have those
Yes.
experiences. So, thank you for saying that.
That's
And
the very much the rest of my journey too, is to realize that what I really had to tame is my rational mind that wants to pluck it apart and understand it from a place of, like, proof rather than
yeah.
the gentler side that gets the proof in the synchronicities, in the information. Now, how could you know something so accurately instantly, the way spirit communicates? And so there's lots of proof, but it doesn't come in these hard and solid facts that you can dissect. It's just in a more of an opening of your heart and a softening of my being. And that
Well,
made the relationship very natural and very everyday.
and I think to your point, like, we have our ego mind, our rational mind, our, like, the human part that, like, wants to like understand all of it, but it's like and wants to like dissect it like you said, but it's like our heart and the spiritual side of us knows that those aren't coincidences, knows that we're always in touch with source. Like, I mean, we're asleep for 8 hours a day, of course we're like back in
Right,
touch with source energy, right?
right.
But it's like our ego mind is like kind of becoming that filter.
Yes,
So we're always in touch with
right,
it, right?
right. And I'm hoping that because children don't have their ego mind yet. That starts to
Right.
really develop in their teenage years. And so, if they already are aware of the reality of the spiritual communications and connectedness, then that is like a muscle that won't atrophy and it'll
Mhm.
become part of life as they grow up and evolve. And then hopefully the existential crises will be less in their teenage years and the answers and the balance in life will be more graceful and natural as they keep those faculties open. Those are all kind of wishes of mine that I hope a book like teaching us what happens when we die can begin to facilitate or set in motion.
So can I ask, like, I'm assuming that you instilled all of this kind of knowledge in your own children.
Hmm.
I mean, how do you think that that's affected them as they've grown up? Because again, like, I have a 9-month-old, I'm thinking about all this stuff.
Right,
I have Neil Donald Walsh's Little Soul in the Sun and like all of
right,
these books, which is like the most
yeah,
beautiful book ever too. I'm totally gonna buy yours
right.
for my kid.
Thank
But
you.
how is like instilling that kind of knowledge changed your kids or affected your kids?
They have grown up to be the most beautiful, balanced, insightful, intelligent human beings.
Yeah.
My boy is now 18. My daughters are in their late 20s, and they have kids of their own. So I have grandkids now.
Oh,
And
nice.
I just see the strength in them. I just see the balance in them. I see their ability to face challenges of the everyday that allow them to look for answers. Because when you have a spiritual connection, you just know that if you ask the right questions or you listen profoundly enough with your deeper senses, that you can find answers to problems. And so they're really strong people. They're really just the kind of people that I now admire and have seen just grown up to be really just complete human beings. They'll have their struggles, but they know now how to draw on all of their being to get through stuff, and they just live the most amazing lives, and they're very inspiring. I notice in their own way they're very inspiring to their generation and other people. So again, I think that's the power of spirit working through us all. That the language of inspiration is so strong, and I
Yeah.
see that in them. They're beautiful people.
That's really cool. You light up when you talk about them. And and it makes me
Yeah,
think about what we were just saying too, where it's like, kids are so much more in touch with source. And like if you even have like all those children talking about their past lives that they remember
yeah.
and stuff. So
Hmm.
like, do you feel like incorporating this kind of stuff into your kids' lives made them not lose that genius, made them not lose touch with that other side? Like, do you feel like they still remembered all of that? Like, did it play
Well,
a part there?
yes and no. Some of the things that I remembered for them, obviously more of a curiosity point of view, and so they have their own growing to do. and they wrestle with their own spiritual questions of what's true. And I've learned from my experience and seeing in them that it's as much as I want to find answers for them, it's really the answers they find themselves from the other
Mm.
side that are the lasting ones and that are really causing the breakthroughs. But the tools of how to do it, like, like Marianne Williamson's Emma and Mommy Talk to God, is like teaching you how to just make simple prayers for people, and just these children's books that Neil Donald Walsh, hopefully this one about Danny's Day in Heaven, they do plant the tools in the children so that as they grow up and they mature, they can. I've always set them free to find their own spiritual path and not limited it to one religion or the other. And so they're finding inspiration in numerous ways now, but the answers that they find for themselves coming from the questions that they had for themselves are the ones that really stick. And so whether I had flashes on their past lives or not didn't matter so much. That was more of like um, curious to them, but not necessarily defining. They are doing it on their own.
I guess that's
Yeah.
also part of being a parent too, right? Like, you can
Yeah.
gently
Right.
guide, but, like, they
Yeah.
have to experience
Yeah.
it.
But knowing about the spiritual language, like knowing about your chakras and things like that, these are important energy centers in your body. You can't underestimate the power of understanding all the tools that we have access to in life. It's really for mental health, emotional health, physical health, spiritual health. It's
Totally.
making very integrated people. So I'm really happy that I was able to contribute some and that they are open to those tools. I do think it makes for a balanced human.
Absolutely. Yeah, and knowing that, like, we're not alone, that we have
Mhm.
guides, and that we are so much
Yes,
more than our physical
yes,
bodies.
yes,
Like you said, it gives
yeah,
them more
hmm,
tools in their toolbox so that when
yes.
challenges do come up, there's a different perspective than maybe there would have been.
Yes, and teaching them about the nature of the subconscious and how you can have program blocks in your own being that
Mm.
stop you from perceiving a spiritual message, for example, because if you don't have the freedom within you or if your own fears or a programmed mind that is set in its ways, knowing just the parameters of the matrix we exist within, I suppose, is really powerful. And they do knock on my door if they have like big pressing questions, like, "Hey, can you help me sort through this?" But I think, again, taking it back to the children's book, it's super important to give tools rather than answers and letting them find the realities of spiritual guides or guidance for yourself through your own experience rather than somebody else um, so doing it for you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So what age is your book made for? Like, what age does someone start reading that kind of I mean, I'm already reading my kids that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, but, like, I mean, when do they really start to, like, have those conversations?
Well, I think it depends on the child. For me, it was always part of my life, but my children um, were really open to it as little kids, and then as they matured and the rational mind kicked in, the ego mind kicked in, they naturally got scared of it. What is death really like? Because you have the emotions come in with it and stuff. So it's a maturation process because the subject is so big. But this book is particularly lighthearted and positive to introduce the nature of spirit, and it's very much geared towards children 6 to 10 years old. With the ones that are little, like my grandson was just 3 when I read it to him, and he just related to it as Golden Land, and he thought it was just this beautiful, confirmation of how he relates to Golden Land, and so you have to kind of tune into your children. They won't get the whole idea of death anyway when they're little because everything is in front of them and their parents are still so connected with them unless they have had the unfortunate circumstance of losing somebody close to them. It's very much an extension of life rather than about death. And so that's a natural extension of life going on beyond death. When you get to the older children, you're dealing more with the grief, which is the language of the body, and our physical reality dropping, a person dropping out of that. Where did they go? So the questions come, and so this book answers or addresses a lot of those questions. But the deeper personal questions are, I believe, within the domain of the parents anyway. So you have to fit that within your family discourse and your own family philosophy and take it the distance with how you are raising your own kids because
Totally.
the emotions come in.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of answered what my next question was, but just, like when someone has passed away and crossed
Hmm.
over, like what have you told your kids like when they were young? Like did you kind of like go into the whole thing or like it's kind of an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's always been a natural lifestyle because for me, like I said, as a child, I had, a lot of spirit like knocking on my being. And I learned from that it's the unresolved life, the lives that haven't really completed what they were here to do or somehow got lost along the way within something that trapped their experience of who they could be or what they wanted to be in life. And I've always taught my children that we are here for a purpose. We have something written in our hearts that we are trying to remember, and it's up to us to kind of learn to tune into who we are and remember, and then contribute that. And if a person has had a fulfilling life or had a chance to contribute from the love of their heart, I I have minimized the grief of the circumstances, knowing that they're not really gone. They've moved back into spirit, and they got out of life a beautiful experience. So it's something worthy to celebrate. And so we have taken that approach in a lot of cases. It's always harder when somebody dies through like a trauma or an accident or something because
Yeah.
I've come to realize what you grieve more than anything is the unlived portion of their lives, not the portion that
Mm.
they got to live, but they couldn't live. And so it's that then opens a whole um, um, avenue of exploration of letting go and of the purpose in life and more like Buddhism and just knowing that attachment is the reasons for suffering. So you get into the spiritual philosophies to try and make sense out of the heartaches that we all go through. But in general, it's been presented to them and become very natural as a continuum, where we exist before we're born and we exist after we die. And you try and maximize who you are by discovering who you are and,
Okay,
and
I don't
bringing.
I don't know if you like see me tearing up over here, but what you just
Mm.
said was so profound
Oh, thank you.
that you grieve the unlived portion.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
That is so true.
Hmm.
That is so, so true. And, I'm thinking about like my own dad passed away 3 months before I got pregnant. And like that's been so hard, like being like, oh, you're missing all of this.
Hmm.
And you're
Yeah.
you're so right
Right.
because you hear people say all the time, like, oh, grief isn't for the people that go because they're already in like an amazing place and they're on their next
Right.
adventure or whatever. It's for us. But it's like or you hear like grief is love and it's like yeah, all that's true, but like I've never heard someone say it as like just true as you just did.
Thank
it's
you.
it's like the what if or what could have been. and and that's like such a lesson, like you said, in letting go of control
Hmm.
because that's not necessarily what life is about, right?
Right. But I also want to comfort you because I'm a portrait artist first and foremost before this book came into being. And as a portrait artist, I get to paint a lot of people that have passed away. And
Mm.
and so as I center in my heart during the painting process, sometimes I have experiences with people from the other side. And you having lost your dad reminds me of this story from a lady that I'd never met. And so for me, there's a confirmation in that because my rational mind didn't know nothing about her. It was just a commission through the internet, and I had to paint this person. And this is in the early days when I was first learning to listen to my intuition, and I was still kind of like battling in my head, like, "Oh no, that's weird. Don't do that." Yeah, you know that, and
Yeah.
learning to listen myself. And I felt very strongly prompted to set this person's head and shoulders and face in the stars. And that was first when I felt at the time that that was really out of the box because I was, doing classical portraits at the time, but I just felt compelled. And I was putting him in the stars. And as I was painting, I was like starting to jam away to this John Denver songs. And I was like, I like John Denver, but all these songs, I just like was compelled to put it on. And I kept hearing these phrases, how I love my lady, and how John Denver sings. So I was
Yeah.
like, I was like feeling like this wasn't me anymore. So I was like, I'm getting a communication from her husband. I just gonna have to just jump in and be bold and send her this communication. So I typed up an email and I'm more comfortable with it now, but at the time that was like a big leap for me because I felt a bit like overstepping because
Yeah.
again, the proof, right? So I typed the email, I said, I feel like he's very much here and I keep having to put him in the stars and he just so smiling and he's just so happy to share how much he loves you and I feel like it's coming through his music. So she wrote me back an email, and this is important for you with your dad, I believe. And she said that every morning she leaves at 10 o'clock in the morning to walk their four doggies. They were like schnauzers or something. And she walked all four of them while she was listening to John Denver songs, crying because she was missing it so much. And she was so sad that he wasn't there with her. And I was like, will you stop crying? Because he's clearly there. He's harassing me with these John Denver songs.
You're like, I don't want to listen to any more John Denver.
He's there with you because how did I know she was listening to John Denver on her walks every morning? He's there with.
That's so
And then
cool.
she said he was dying of cancer, so he actually made his poems. He chose his own memorial poem for his memorial, and she said, "Let me share it with you after what you said." And it was a little snippet from The Little Prince, and it was, "In the stars I shall be living, in the stars I shall be laughing, and so it shall be as you look at the stars at night." I forget the exact words, but that you will feel my happiness fill your heart. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's why he's making me paint him in the stars. And he's just bright, so bright. And he had fulfilled, without me knowing any of those things, he had fulfilled what he had set in motion as a physical being on the other side, and then confirming it through this portrait back to his lady, who he hadn't forgotten, who he had not been missing. He was on the walks with her, obviously, aware that she was playing John Denver songs. And so from that, I do a lot of reflecting and I realize the barricades are in us. They're not in them. They go towards oneness, and the oneness is with us too, and so it is with your dad. The barricades are in us because we are incarnated in a physical reality where we have to separate out. We have to make something out of building blocks, and in that separating out, we naturally separate out from the ones we've lost. But they're in oneness, and they're with it all. They're not missing out. They are part of your life. He is part of your life. Your Is it a daughter? You have a daughter,
Son, he's a son.
a son, and your son's life. So I was comforted by that. She was comforted by that, and the stories continue as I do more portraits. But people. I don't plan the confirmations. The confirmations just come knocking because I'm not the one generating them. It's the spirit of the person drawing that will generate them. And it's a very strong, convincing proof that we're so much more than our physical bodies, and we don't actually lose the ones we love. And that's another message in the children's book, that you never lose who or what you love because the connection remains.
That is a phenomenal story, and thank you so much for sharing it. And I didn't realize that's the cover of the book behind you, the painting. Because when
Yeah,
you started, I was like, I love that.
very.
So
Oh,
cool.
Danny's day in heaven. Yeah, I
Oh,
hope
I'm
it
totally gonna
comforts
buy it
you.
for my kid. I love it.
The book is meant to be comforting because it is reminding us. It's not telling you how you should think of what it needs to be. It's set up as a reminder what you already know inside of you. You
Mm.
know something from the other side. Every one of us remembers something, and hopefully you'll recognize some of what you remember, and then you can expand on your knowledge by your own experience.
So does in the book, and we only have like a couple minutes, but in the book, I know you said that he drowns and then it touches on
Hmm.
all the classic NDE things. So I'm assuming
Hmm.
like the out of body experience, the life
Hmm.
review, like all
Yes.
of that.
Yes.
And then does he see people who have passed? Like what else happens? Does he
Yes.
end up coming back? Like what's the whole, just if
All
you
of
could
the
give it
above.
me like a quick little, yeah.
Yes, all of the above. He does. He has the life review in which, and I did that on purpose because based on the life of Daniel Brinkley, he learned that firsthand. He wasn't a nice guy before he died the first time. In
Mm,
fact, he was in the army, and he actually ended up having to kill people on missions, and so he of course, I couldn't introduce that topic to children, but I made him a bully. And so he was a bully. Well, and then when he drowns, he touches the other side. He touches a world of infinite love and support. You can
beautiful.
see him going to the tunnel. And he's going in feet first, because that's one thing that Daniel observed. He went in feet first into the other side.
That's
And
amazing.
so,
The art is gorgeous. Did you
thank
illustrate
you.
it too?
Yeah, I illustrated it. Hmm. And so here's his life review, having all the vignettes. And so he sees in that all the moments of heartache and misery. And from that, he wakes up to the contrast of the much love that he finds himself in now and how healing it is to be loved unconditionally. And then from that, he gets the message that, he's so much more capable of loving than he has allowed himself to be. And then he meets a second grade teacher who died and realizes that she is still alive and she is still learning and growing. And you never lose. He actually gets to meet his puppy, who he also
Oh
lost.
my God.
And it's like,
You're gonna
and,
make me cry again.
the geometric flowers and just the
Yeah,
nature
no,
of energy
the
from the
art
other
is
side.
stunning.
Thank you. And then he gets, taken back to his body. And obviously he's resuscitated with a smile on his face because the message is so profound that I am with you always. I'm only a breath away.
Oh my
And
gosh. Amazing.
the connectedness I feel is what we all hunger for. I think so many of us feel lonely, we feel lost a little, we feel isolated, and it's the connectedness that begins the healing. And then from there, the magic unfolds. So that's my wish, to bring that to children.
Amazing. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for sharing that. I'm just so grateful for you for coming on today.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go buy your book. And
Thank you.
hopefully a lot of other people will as well, because I think
Yeah,
it's really important. Like you said, we have fear when we don't understand something, and
right.
sure, we don't fully understand, but there are so many accounts,
So
like
many.
so many from
Right.
all over the world, from different
Mhm.
beliefs, and they all have those
Mhm.
same elements.
That's
So,
right.
to say that we
Yeah.
don't really know what happens is like a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it's like having to reinvent the wheel. You can't take
Yeah.
what's now out there. There's so much awareness out there. It's definitely
Yeah.
not a black hole. The black hole I used to be afraid of as a child is incinerated. That's no longer a thing.
Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if
Mhm.
I'm sure, if you want to just take a moment to let viewers, listeners know where they can find the book, where they can connect with you, anything else you want to share.
Oh, thank you. Well, the book is published through Beyond Words, so you can go on their website or you can find it on your local bookstore, indie shops, or also on Amazon. Also on my website, which is makfineart.com. And I have an Instagram and Facebook handle at makfineart. And if you wanted to drop me a line on email, I would love to hear your experience with the book or a story that you want to share, and stay in touch.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Marie Antoinette. It has
Thanks,
been
Chris.
such a pleasure. If you're listening, please send this to someone you think would resonate with it. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all of the things. And I will see you all next week. Have a beautiful rest of your day.